Yo, what up? It's your boy Icky Rogers here with Underground Oracles. Let's get into it. Why did I choose the name Icky Rogers? Icky Rogers was a funny kind of like childhood nickname that existed within my family growing up. It wasn't something my family called me all the time, just kind of to be funny. They would call me Icky sometimes because there used to be a football player named Icky Woods, who my dad was a big fan of, and he wanted to name me after this football player, and my mother refused. So, when I was coming up with my rap name, originally I went by something else when I was really, really young. But when I finally claimed my identity, I decided that Icky Rogers was probably the most natural feeling name. So it just felt right, and I just rolled with it. Been Icky ever since. So what made me get into music? I grew up in a family where music was our love language, pretty much. It was the universal binding agent between all the people in my family. It was our form of escape, our form of entertainment, and it's something we all bonded over. So I grew up in a very musical household. Both of my grandparents were into music. Both of my grandfathers played instruments. My mother's dad was a pianist. My dad's mom was a gospel singer. So growing up, my dad also used to sing and dabble in music recording and music production in our basement when I was growing up. This was back in the 2000s, early 2000s, late 90s. My dad got a Yamaha keyboard that I really liked, and I would play and mess around with when he wasn't home. And so that's kind of how I got into music, just kind of imitating my dad and following him around the house, trying to sing like him and be like him. And then once I got a little older into my teenage years, I started to develop more of an actual personal appreciation and started to learn more about the history and everything like that. So, yeah. Obviously, everybody's been really affected by the pandemic. Personally, as an artist, it's given me mixed results in terms of obviously being able to perform, tour, interact, things of that nature. It's been difficult. I have performed at a few shows here and there, limited capacity, things like that, seated events, social distance, everything like that. And then in other senses, I found that some people have gravitated more to my music because they're in the house, they're listening and consuming a lot of media, just because everything's been on lockdown. So it's been a gift and a curse, but mostly I think it's just hampered the creative process of going outside of the home to really do anything creative. I have recording equipment at my house, so I was still able to get down at my house, but anything besides that was really out the window. So it kind of forced me to change my process last year, and I had to get down with a little more home recording techniques and things like that. My experience as a queer artist in Salt Lake. Let me tell you, people, we are on the cusp of a revolution. Not just in Salt Lake, but in hip hop in general. The queer revolution is coming, okay? It's not just me, it's not just Salt Lake. All across markets, all across the country, and all across the world, you're starting to see these voices emerge in hip hop that come from this queer background. This was, and that's not specific to hip hop, but I think we all know kind of the homophobia that exists in the genre. So my experience has been hard at the start, difficult, but also beautiful. And I've honestly can say that while there are a lot of haters, who talk behind the scenes and everything like that, I've actually received a lot of support from some people in the hip hop scene, whether those are leaders, DJs, other MCs. So that feels good. It makes me feel validated. But in that sense, I am an exception, and I should not be an exception. Other queer voices should be able to exist in that space as well, or should not have to work as hard as I had to work to get to this place. It should be a lot easier, you know what I mean? And if once this queer revolution happens in hip hop, this queer explosion that's most certainly coming, everything's gonna be different. Some people think that's bad, some people think that's good. I personally can't wait. So my experience has been difficult, but it's also been beautiful, and it's taught me a lot, and it's something that you just take on as a queer artist. If this is what you want to do, it's unfortunately a part of what you do is going to be to face adversity and things like that because of your queerness and your identity, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles. You know, you gotta. We're not in a position as a queer artist. I'm not in a position right now to where we can kind of settle for anything, or we have to pioneer and keep pushing so that the next generation can reap the rewards of what this generation of queer hip hop artists are doing in the city and the world. Queer representation is important in hip hop because representation, real honest representation, is important in all genres, specifically hip hop. Hip hop is supposed to be a genre that speaks truth to power. Not only that, in the hip hop community or the black community, there are queer people. We exist. So it wouldn't make sense that any space where people, whether it be a musical genre or any other space, you're gonna see the variety in the in the population reflected. And that's been suppressed for a long time, but it's important because it's realistic, it's honest. Representation is honest. If you're really portraying how the world is, you're gonna have voices from different experiences. So I think that's why representation matters, and because, you know, for obvious reasons, like people need to see themselves reflected in media and culture and music. If they don't, then usually, you know, it's just important because you have to see yourself reflected in the society you live in order to kind of project this positive self-image. You don't have to, but you know, it helps when you have positive reinforcing figures in your society that you can look to as an example. I would say BAD BITCHERY, you know, a love of street food, street culture in general. No, but for real, I'm very into world building and creating like an immersive environment. So I feel like with songwriting and things, I can bring people into an immersive environment that I create, like a mini simulation, so that they can learn more about me. So with my artistry, I kind of like to jump between, I would say, street knowledge, street philosophy, and then I like some esoteric stuff. I like to throw that in there. It's very hard for me to not kind of try to incorporate some kind of like underlying esoteric message in my music. It's not always like that. Like I said, sometimes it's more reflected on street culture. Sometimes it's also more reflective in general. I like to say that I make music like mostly, I do have a few like dance tracks and things like that because I do love to dance, but I like to make music for people who are reflective, who kind of, you know, don't have a problem throwing some headphones on and taking a walk and just getting kind of lost in the world, and, you know, are willing to go there with me. So I don't know. I really just like to portray, like I said, bad bitchery, you know, and just a love of hip hop. I'm just like a total hip hop head. I'm totally influenced by all the stuff that came before me. You know, I love hip hop. I love black music. So you'll hear some of those elements in my work as well, those nods to the past, just because I'm obsessed with previous, you know, what's come before me and other musicians as well. So I just like to kind of portray that music culture in my stuff, street culture, a little esotericism, and some bad bitchery to top it off. Some of my biggest musical influences, probably the biggest is Miles Davis. I love Miles Davis. He was a very cantankerous and awful man, but he was an absolute genius when it came to the craft of making music. I am really really inspired by his ideologies and his methods for looking at the creation of music. Dr. Dre is another person, also terrible, who I was really influenced by just because his approach to creating albums, like I said, was very immersive. He would create a very immersive environment that made you feel like you were almost in a movie or some kind of simulation. He completely could create these full sonic environments within these albums, and I love that. Let's see, I'm really influenced by Whitney Houston, Sade, Nina Simone, Grace Jones, women in general. Women musicians tend to inspire me quite a bit. And I think my biggest influence outside of that would be my father or my parents, my childhood, my imagination, probably. A change I would like to see in the hip hop community would be making more money, everybody making more money, especially locally. Less clout chasing, to be honest, and capping, because it doesn't really matter if you have platinum albums or how many records you sell. You still ain't fucking with me, so no. But honestly, I think just less ego and more cooperation. Obviously, I'd like to see more women represented, more queer people, and I'd like us all to make more money, to be quite frank. It's hard to be a musician or an artist when you don't make any money. So I think we need to foster a community where everybody getting paid. And that's, streaming makes it very difficult. And I think even outside of locally or in hip hop, we really need to get together on this monetary system of streaming, because it's kind of taking, I feel like, money out of people's pockets, So I think we got to get that together, because it's a little exploitive of artistry, and I think it cheapens it, this system we're in now. So I'd like to see this streaming culture we have, at least monetarily, go away and be replaced by something. My favorite thing about Salt Lake City's music scene is the hunger. There's a lot of hungry people here, a lot of talented people. They all have these visions, and you can see them executing these visions. And I think right now we're in a really good time for artistry in Salt Lake, because there's a lot more variety, more than ever before. So I really love that, and I love that for the most part there is always that core group of individuals who are actually dedicated to the culture. There are a lot of vultures. There's a lot of people who just want to be famous. There's a lot of kind of people that aren't really taking it serious, but there is that core group you can usually find here of musicians who actually do care about hip hop culture and know about hip hop culture and want to contribute to that in a more positive or expansive way. If I could go back to the start of the pandemic, but I knew everything I do now, I'd probably make some investments. Perhaps in like a company that develops vaccines. I don't know. Perhaps in what I actually should have done? I probably should have started a TikTok with all my downtime. I guess I'd probably tell myself that. Learn how to make TikTok videos, because I'm terrible at it. I don't even know how to use it. I'm an old man now. I can admit it. My brain doesn't work like that. I don't have the capability. Props to everyone who does. Y'all be working it out on there, but my dumb ass gets on there and can pretty much just put a filter and music on my stuff. So yeah, I'd probably tell myself to get big on TikTok. For this year, moving forward, I just want to perform more. If I'm performing, I want y'all to come see me, and I want us to, get down. Once they open up these clubs, everyone come out and have a good time. And I'm gonna be dropping some new music soon. I'm working on a full mixtape, so I'll be putting that out later in the year. So for the rest of the year, just get ready for those things we discussed earlier. The street knowledge, the bad bitchery, the escotericism, all of it is all coming back in full force. Mostly towards the end of the year, but we'll see. You know, keep your eyes peeled. Streets is watching.